When we usually think about the centers of power in our stories or even in our own history, we tend to picture like kings in their sprawling sunlit castles.
Right, or presidents sitting at polished mahogany desks in the Oval Office.
Exactly. Or maybe generals commanding vast armies from a highly secured, technologically advanced war room.
Absolutely. We picture these figures of authority, of real agency.
Yeah, we picture action, someone making a decision, and the world just sort of bending to that will. But for this deep dive, I want you to erase all of that for a moment. Just completely wipe the slate clean.
That's a good way to frame it.
Because instead, I want you to picture the exact terrifying opposite. I want you to picture a rotting, skeletal god strapped into a decaying piece of ancient machinery, sitting on a throne built entirely on lies.
It is an incredibly evocative, almost suffocating image, isn't it?
It really is.
And it completely upends our normal, everyday expectations of what supreme leadership actually looks like. It forces us to confront a reality where power isn't about triumph. It's about sheer, agonizing endurance.
Exactly. Welcome to today's deep dive. Today, we are looking at a universe that is so impossibly vast and so profoundly dark that it practically redefines the entire concept of a dystopian future.
It definitely sets a new benchmark for Grimm.
Yeah, it really does. And our source material today is this fascinating, deeply unsettling set of historical accounts, testimonies, and philosophical tracts collectively known as The God Emperor and The Tragedy of the Golden Throne.
Which is a fantastic collection of sources.
It is. And our mission for this deep dive is to explore the absolute most profound, most tragic, and honestly the most contradictory figure in this entire sprawling universe.
Because we aren't just here to walk through a timeline of fictional history, right?
We are going to unpack the terrifying themes of systemic hypocrisy,
Right.
of massive institutional decay, and the ultimate horrific cost of a species' mere survival. Okay, let's unpack this, because what we're really looking at here is the ultimate example of a creator who is entirely consumed, physically and ideologically, by his own creation.
That is precisely the lens we need to use if we are going to make any sense of this material.
Mm.
Because to truly understand this universe, we have to look at the Emperor not just as a leader or some historical figurehead.
Right, he's more than that.
Exactly. We have to see him as the literal, physical, and psychic foundational bedrock upon which an entire, sprawling, galaxy-spanning civilization is built.
Wow.
And crucially, we must understand that he is also the foundation of all its rot. You cannot separate the crumbling, fanatical empire from the agonizing, decaying state of its founder. They are one and the same.
Right, and before we can really comprehend the sheer visceral horror of this corpse sitting on a throne, we have to establish a baseline,
We definitely need that context.
We need to understand the unimaginable, practically mythological heights from which this being actually fell. Because the contrast, like the delta between what he was and what he is now,
Yeah.
is what actually makes this a tragedy rather than just a straight-up horror story.
Yes, the fall is the point.
Exactly. The accounts start by introducing his original ancient identity, which is known as the anathema.
The anathema. Even just that title suggests something fundamental, something deeply rooted in the architecture of this universe.
How so?
Well, anathema literally means something or someone that one vehemently dislikes, or a formal curse by a pope or a council of the church, excommunicating a person or denouncing a doctrine.
Okay.
But in this context, he is the anathema to a great cosmic evil. He exists in direct, almost chemical opposition to it.
Yeah, and the accounts make a point right away to say that before he was this corpse god, he was a man. But the writers immediately throw up a massive red flag and explicitly warn us that the word man is woefully, almost laughably inadequate here.
It's an incredibly important distinction to make early on. The material describes him as the most powerful human psychic to ever exist.
Right.
Now, we need to pause and define our terms here, because when we say psychic in the context of this universe, we aren't talking about parlor tricks.
We're not talking about bending spoons or whatever.
Exactly. We aren't talking about reading someone's mind to guess a number between 1 and 10. We are talking about a being of such immense, sheer, terrifying will that he could single-handedly hold back the forces of chaos.
And that's a massive concept right there. Let's break down what chaos and the warp actually mean in this universe, because if you don't grasp this, literally none of the Emperor's actions make any sense.
Precisely. In this lore, there is the material universe, the physical realm of stars, planets, and flesh that we understand.
Right, the normal universe.
Yes, but parallel to that exists an alternate dimension called the warp. And the warp is not made of matter. It is a dimension composed entirely of pure, turbulent psychic energy.
It sounds chaotic.
It is. It is essentially an ocean of raw emotion and thought generated by the collective consciousness of every sentient being in the galaxy.
So wait, every time a human or an alien feels rage or despair or ambition, that emotion actually bleeds into this alternate dimension.
Exactly, bleeds over. And over millions of years, those pooling emotions coagulate. They gain sentience.
Oh, wow.
The most extreme emotions, boundless rage, manipulative ambition, stagnant despair, and excessive indulgence coalesced into literal gods. These are the chaos gods.
That is terrifying.
It is. The warp is a screaming, churning hell dimension populated by demonic entities born from our own worst impulses. And it is constantly, relentlessly trying to bleed over into the physical universe to consume it.
So when the source material says the Emperor is the most powerful psychic, it means his mind is basically a heavily fortified galactic-scale dam holding back this ocean of literal hell.
That's the perfect way to visualize it. What does it mean for a single human mind to act as a dam against an ocean of chaotic, destructive, sentient energy?
It's unfathomable.
It means his mind is a weapon of planetary, even galactic scale. It means he operates on a level of existence that is entirely divorced from regular human experience, even while theoretically being biologically human himself. He is a singular, lonely entity bearing a cosmic, unimaginable weight.
And here's the thing. He didn't just sit around cross-legged in a cave somewhere, meditating and holding back the dark with his mind. He had a plan.
A very active plan.
An incredibly ambitious, hyperactive plan. The source material outlines what it calls the Great Crusade. And let's be super clear of the scale here. This was a 200-year campaign to literally reunite all of humanity across the entire galaxy.
200 years.
Yeah, 200 years of relentless, expanding, unapologetic conquest and unification.
The logistics alone are staggering. You are talking about coordinating fleets of thousands of ships, navigating across the stars, finding isolated pockets of humanity that have been separated for thousands of years, and forcing them back into a single unified empire under his direct rule.
Right, and to pull this off, to actually execute a galactic conquest, he didn't just recruit some clever generals from a military academy.
No, she did not.
He went into the lab. The accounts detail his creation of the Primarchs. These were 20 genetically engineered demigods designed specifically to lead his massive armies, which are known as the Space Marine Legions.
Which is wild to think about.
So he is basically custom building his own mythological heroes in test tubes to conquer the stars.
Which is a fascinating, heavily revealing approach to leadership and delegation. He isn't relying on natural human development.
Right, he's bypassing it.
He isn't relying on earned merit or finding the best organic leaders among his people. He is engineering perfection from scratch. He is taking his own genetic material, combining it with esoteric science, and manufacturing loyalty, superhuman intellect, and unmatched martial prowess.
And this is where I have to push back, because I'm reading this and I'm thinking, this feels like an impossibly arrogant architectural project.
It certainly does.
It feels like he's trying to build a perfectly unified, perfectly structured, 100-story skyscraper, but he's trying to build it across a galaxy that is fundamentally made of quicksand.
That's a great analogy.
I mean, if he's this god-tier genius who understands the universe better than anyone, how could he not see the flaw in this? Was creating 20 genetically engineered demigods actually an act of brilliant foresight? Or was this the ultimate blinding hubris of a man who thought he could play God and manufacture perfect loyalty in a lab?
That is the pivotal, defining question of his entire existence, and it's heavily debated within the sources themselves.
I bet it is.
You have a being of immense, almost incomprehensible intellect and power. He sees the chaos of the galaxy. He intimately understands the threats looming in the dark of the warp, and his ultimate solution is absolute, unyielding control.
Control over everything.
Yes. If human nature is flawed, volatile, and vulnerable to chaotic emotions, bypass it entirely. Engineer demigods who are supposedly above it. Build an army of genetically modified super soldiers whose emotions are biologically stunted and redirected purely into warfare and loyalty.
So it's brilliant on paper.
It is brilliant in its sheer scale, yes. But it is deeply, fundamentally arrogant because it assumes he can perfectly control the variables of a chaotic universe. He believed he could out-engineer human emotion and cosmic entropy.
Wait, I'm stuck on this, though.
Yeah.
If he could literally see the future, because the sources hint at his prophetic abilities, right?
We do, yes.
Then how did he not see his own sons, these perfect test tube demigods, turning on him? That doesn't sound like a genius to me. That sounds like a guy who is so obsessed with his own blueprint, he isn't looking at the actual construction site.
That's a brilliant observation, and the lore actually addresses this tragic blind spot. Prophecy in this universe isn't a clear window, it's more like a shattered mirror.
Okay.
He could see possible futures, possible outcomes, but his hubris was believing that his sheer will could force the universe down the single narrow path he chose.
He thought he could just force it to happen.
Exactly. He treated his Primarch sons not as human beings with emotional needs, insecurities, and vulnerabilities, but as incredibly complex biological tools. He gave them godlike power, but neglected to give them the emotional foundation to handle it.
Oh, that's a recipe for disaster.
Completely.
Yeah.
And when you give a being the power to conquer worlds, but the emotional maturity of a neglected child, you are planting the seeds of your own destruction.
And spoiler alert for anyone listening, those seeds sprouted into a galaxy-burning forest fire. The accounts tell us this grand plan, this beautifully engineered skyscraper, was shattered by an event called the Horus Heresy.
Which the historical records identify as a massive, catastrophic civil war.
Right.
And crucially, it was instigated by the very chaos gods the Emperor was trying to hold back and starve out. The chaos gods recognized the threat the Emperor posed to their existence.
So they fought back.
But they didn't attack him directly with fleets of demons. They attacked his blind spot, they whispered to his Primarchs, they played on their pride, their insecurities, their feelings of neglect, and their martial honor.
Wow. So the gods of emotion used the emotional flaws of the Emperor's perfect logical tools against him.
Precisely. This is the turning point of the entire narrative. This is the absolute end of the dream of a rational, unified galaxy and the beginning of the eternal nightmare. Half of his perfect engineered sons rebelled.
Half of them. That's huge.
Yes, the engineered perfection fractured. The manufactured loyalty was broken. The tools he meticulously created to unify humanity became the very instruments of its near destruction. It culminated in a massive siege of the Emperor's own palace, a battle that left the galaxy in ruins and the Emperor mortally wounded.
It's the classic tragic flaw cranked up to a cosmic scale. The very thing he built to save everyone is what brings the whole house crashing down on their heads.
Absolutely.
And the physical destruction of the Emperor's grand empire, this massive, bloody civil war that burned thousands of worlds, that's really only half the tragedy. Our sources make it abundantly clear that the ideological destruction is arguably far worse and infinitely more ironic.
It's a staggering contradiction.
Yeah, I want to transition here and talk about how his original philosophy was violently, totally inverted by his own surviving followers.
Yes, the transition from his original stated intent during the Great Crusade to the current grim reality of the Imperium 10,000 years later is incredibly jarring. It's a total 180-degree turn.
It's the grand hypocrisy of this entire setting. The central paradox we pulled from the accounts is this. The Emperor explicitly, adamantly, and violently forbade any form of religion.
He was entirely against it.
He called his philosophy the imperial truth.
Yeah.
He was an absolute militant atheist. He burned down churches. He executed priests. He wanted a universe governed entirely by cold reason, science, and logic.
Right.
He believed that religion fed the emotional turbulence of the warp, giving power to the chaos gods. And yet, cut to 10,000 years later, what is he now? He is worshipped as its supreme deity.
Yes.
He is the center of a fanatical galaxy-wide cult. He is, ironically, the god of atheism.
What's fascinating here is the underlying psychology of the Imperium's citizenry and how the source material explores the mechanics of belief.
Right, because you have to wonder how that happened.
Exactly. You have to ask yourself, stepping back from the lore and looking at human nature, why would a society deify the exact man who wanted to destroy gods? Why elevate someone to divine status, complete with prayers, holy texts, and inquisitions, when his core foundational philosophy was the violent eradication of that very concept?
I mean, because they didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
Or because human nature just fundamentally demanded it. If you take away all their gods and then the sky starts raining literal demons, they're going to latch on to the biggest, strongest thing in the room and pray to it.
Right. It speaks to a profound, inescapable desperation. In times of absolute suffocating darkness, when survival is not just difficult but seemingly impossible, humanity will inherently build a religion out of whatever is keeping them alive.
That makes a lot of sense.
It doesn't matter what that savior actually wanted. It doesn't matter what his original edicts or philosophical treatises were. When the void is staring back at you, when actual nightmares are tearing through the fabric of reality to consume your world, and this one monumental golden figure is the only thing standing between you and utter extinction.
Reverence inevitably transforms into worship.
Exactly. Rationality gives way to faith.
Because rationality doesn't comfort you when a demon is trying to eat your soul.
Exactly. Faith is a much stronger psychological shield against cosmic terror than a textbook on logic. The Emperor tried to force a rational framework onto a universe that is fundamentally irrational and hostile.
And when he fell,
His people reverted to the oldest human defense mechanism, superstition and divine worship.
it's a terrifying mirror for us. I really want you, listening right now, to try and put yourself in that headspace for a second. Imagine dedicating your entire life, centuries of your incredibly long life, to destroying a single concept.
Yes, imagine the sheer willpower that takes.
You fight massive wars, you spill oceans of blood, you engineer demigods, all to establish a universe governed entirely by reason and devoid of religion. And then you fall. You are paralyzed.
And then the ultimate irony happens.
Right. Your broken, silent body is used as the ultimate, supreme symbol to promote that exact same concept of fanatical religious worship for 10,000 years. And you had to sit there, completely conscious, and watch it happen, unable to stop it. It is a psychological torture that perfectly matches his physical one.
It is the ultimate total defeat. He didn't just lose the physical civil war against his rebellious sons, he lost the ideological war to his own loyal survivors. His legacy was hijacked by the very desperation and fear he tried to cure humanity of. He's been turned into a prisoner of his own myth.
Which brings us directly to the physical reality of his defeat. This profound ideological failure we just discussed is perfectly, sickeningly mirrored by the visceral, physical nightmare of his current, unending existence.
The machinery.
Yeah, we need to talk about the mechanics of the Golden Throne.
The physical state of the Emperor is the visual and thematic anchor for this entire universe. It is the core image that defines the grim darkness the accounts constantly refer to. It is the inescapable reality of their existence.
The accounts paint a picture that is just utterly terrifying. When you picture the center of a galactic empire, you don't picture this. It describes him as a rotting, skeletal corpse.
Literally a corpse.
Yeah. He has been trapped on this massive, complex machine called the Golden Throne for 10,000 years, 10 millennia. The descriptions are very clear. He cannot speak. He cannot move a single muscle. He is a withered husk, little more than bone and ancient, desiccated flesh. And most tragically of all, he cannot die.
And we have to look closely at the mechanics of how he remains in this state. The text doesn't just say he's resting. It mentions he is kept alive only by extreme measure.
Extreme measures.
Yes. It details ancient, failing life support systems integrated directly into his nervous system. It explicitly states he is screaming silently in eternal agony. This is crucial to understand.
Because it's not a peaceful coma.
Far from it. How does the Golden Throne actually work? It is an arcane, incredibly complex piece of technology, part life support, part psychic amplifier.
Let's break that down. Why does a psychic need an amplifier?
Because after his mortal wounding in the Civil War, his physical body began to die. But his mind, his sheer psychic might, was still needed to hold back the warp and, more importantly, to project a massive psychic beacon across the galaxy known as the Astronomicon.
The Astronomicon.
Think of it as a psychic lighthouse. Without that lighthouse, human ships cannot navigate the treacherous, chaotic currents of the warp.
So they'd be stranded.
Exactly. Without warp travel, the empire of a million worlds instantly fractures, isolated and alone, easily picked off by alien threats and demonic incursions.
So the throne forces his soul to stay tethered to his rotting physical body, amplifying his psychic power so it acts as this galactic lighthouse. But the process of doing that is sheer, unadulterated torture.
Yes.
This isn't a king in a peaceful slumber, waiting to be awakened like King Arthur. This isn't an honorable resting place. This is an active, unending torture device. He is trapped within ancient machinery, enduring a state of living death, forced to burn his own consciousness like a candle just to keep the lights on for everyone else.
Yes. And no one actually understands how the machine works anymore?
Wait, seriously? They don't even know how to fix it?
No. The scientists and engineers who built it 10,000 years ago are long dead. The current caretakers are essentially just mechanics performing rituals, applying holy oils, and praying to the cogs, terrified of touching the wrong wire and accidentally shutting off the beacon that keeps humanity alive.
It's horrifying. And what's wild is how this withered, tortured husk sitting in a failing machine perfectly represents the Imperium itself. Think about it. The Emperor is the ultimate symbol of the Imperium.
He is.
When I read this, it makes me think of a dying submarine. Imagine a massive nuclear submarine deep underwater. The hull is breached, water is slowly leaking in, the air scrubbers are failing. To keep the engine running, they literally have to start throwing crew members into the reactor furnace.
Isn't a bleak image?
And all the while, the captain of the submarine died at the wheel decades ago. He's just a skeleton strapped to the command chair. But the surviving crew is so terrified, so steeped in denial, that they salute the skeleton every day, pretend he's still giving orders, and fiercely execute anyone who suggests the submarine is actually sinking.
That analogy of the dying submarine is an incredibly accurate distillation of the Imperium state. It captures the claustrophobia, the systemic failure, and the desperate, bloody maintenance required just to maintain a doomed status quo.
Right.
The original structure, the intent, was grand and noble. The Great Crusade, the unification, a sleek vessel meant to traverse the stars. But the reality is irreversible decay.
It's rotting from the inside.
Precisely. The emperor is described in the historical fragments as a father who failed his sons. He is now merely the figurehead of this decaying, fanatical shell of an empire. The outward projection of divine power, the massive cathedrals and golden statues, is just a thin, brittle mask over a reality of rotting, agonizing stasis.
And to really grasp the scale of this nightmare, to understand how that dying submarine actually operates day to day, we can't just look at the Emperor from afar. We can't just talk about the high-level philosophy.
We need to see the ground level.
The historical accounts don't just give us the macro view, they give us actual chilling testimonies. We get to hear from the victims strapped to the machine, from the executioners who feed the reactor, and from the bureaucrats who sit in the safe rooms and keep this whole horrific system running every single day.
These varying perspectives are vital because they ground the abstract cosmic horror in a lived institutional reality. It takes it from mythology to a functional, horrifying bureaucracy.
Exactly. Let's start with the first perspective we pulled from the accounts. The victim, the Emperor's own voice, or, well, a fragmented glimpse of his shattered will.
It's barely a voice at this point.
Yeah, the texts provide this psychic whisper, a deeply buried transmission that only his most powerful, psychically attuned servants sometimes receive. He says he is neither man nor God. He is the shadow that guards the way. He is the only thing that stands between humanity and the abyss. And then the gut punch, and he is failing.
That last phrase, "he is failing," is perhaps the most devastating part of the entire collection of documents. Let's unpack the mechanics of that failure.
Okay, let's see that.
Despite his immense godlike will, despite enduring 10,000 years of continuous agony on the throne, his physical body is inevitably breaking down. The machinery of the Golden Throne is failing, and nobody knows how to fix it.
The dam is cracking.
The dam is cracking. The text notes his desperate, lonely burden. He isn't the triumphant, omnipotent golden figure the imperial cult worships. He is fully, tragically aware of his own deterioration and the impending doom of the species he sacrificed everything to save.
So what does this all mean for us as observers? I'm reading this and I keep asking myself, should we pity him?
It's a complicated question.
Because, yes, the accounts say he is fighting this hopeless, agonizing war to protect a species that he believes has betrayed him and his rational vision. He feels profoundly betrayed. But, and let's be honest here, didn't he entirely set the stage for this betrayal?
He certainly played a massive role in it.
He created the flawed demigods that turned on him. He enforced his atheism violently, burning worlds that disagreed with him. He built an empire entirely on ruthless military conquest and the absolute suppression of dissent. Can you really complain about your house burning down when you're the one who built it out of dry tinder, soaked it in gasoline, and handed out matches to a bunch of emotionally stunted super soldiers?
It is a profound, incredibly dense moral ambiguity. And you are right to push back on the narrative of pure victimhood.
I mean, he's not innocent, right?
You can absolutely pity the unending, visceral agony of his physical existence, the sheer, unimaginable torment of being trapped in a rotting body, screaming silently for 10 millennia. No conscious being deserves that. But you are entirely justified in questioning his status as an innocent martyr. His tragedy is largely self-authored.
Thousands.
His methods during the Great Crusade were uncompromising and ruthless. He demanded absolute obedience and utilized mass destruction, wiping out entire alien species and non-compliant human civilizations to achieve his vision of unification.
Right, unification of the barrel of a gun.
Exactly. His current state is the direct, undeniable consequence of his own catastrophic miscalculations regarding human nature, emotional vulnerability, and the insidious nature of the warp. He is a deeply tragic figure, absolutely, but he is not an innocent one.
Right, he is the architect of his own hell. And speaking of innocence, or, the complete lack thereof, let's move to the people who actually have to physically maintain this nightmare on a daily basis, the people shoveling the coal.
The executioners.
Let's look at the second perspective, the executioners. The historical logs introduce us to a faction known as the Sisters of Silence.
The Sisters of Silence are a fascinating mechanical necessity in this lore and deeply unsettling. The texts describe them as nulls or blanks.
Nulls.
Yes. They are the literal silence in the warp. They are an all-female order of warriors who crew the massive, ominous vessels known as the Black Ships.
Okay, stop right there. What exactly is a null? We talked about psychers having a connection to the warp. What makes a null different?
To understand a null, you have to remember that in this universe, almost every human being has a tiny spark of a soul that reflects in the warp. Psychers have a massive, blazing fire of a soul that draws warp energy.
Okay, so a normal person is a spark. A psyker is a bonfire.
Exactly. A null, however, is a biological and metaphysical anomaly. They possess absolutely no soul reflection in the warp whatsoever. They are a void, a black hole in the psychic landscape.
That sounds intense.
Because the warp is the dimension of emotion and soul, the complete absence of it is abhorrent to normal humans. Just being in the same room as a null makes a normal person feel physically nauseous, deeply uneasy, and instinctively paranoid. They exude an aura of wrongness.
Oh, wow. So they just inherently creep people out.
Yes. And to a psyker or a demonic entity, being near a null is blinding, agonizing pain. They naturally suppress and smother warp energy just by existing.
That is wild. So they're essentially walking, breathing anti-magic fields, and their job is to crew these black ships. And what they do on those ships is horrifying. We have a direct quote from a journal of a Sister of Silence. She says, "We hear their screams in the dark holds. We see their terrified faces. We know exactly what we are doing. We are not the angels of mercy. We are the carters of the dead."
It's chilling.
And then she drops the real mechanical bombshell of how this whole empire functions. The Emperor's Light, that psychic lighthouse keeping humanity from being wiped out, is fueled by human souls.
This is the grim, mechanical reality of the extreme measures keeping the Emperor alive. The Golden Throne requires immense power, and the Emperor's dying body cannot supply it alone anymore.
So it needs fuel.
He requires sustenance, and that sustenance is human souls, specifically the souls of psychers. The Sisters of Silence, because they are immune to psychic powers and naturally suppress them, are the perfect wardens.
They're jailers.
Yes. Their sole duty is to travel the galaxy in the Black Ships, rounding up hundreds of thousands of newly emerged psychers, often terrified children or confused adults who have suddenly manifested dangerous powers, and bringing them back to Earth, to Terra, to be consumed by the throne.
I just want to sit with that for a second. It is the ultimate terrifying industrial supply chain. In our world, we are used to thinking about supply chains for food, for crude oil, for rare earth metals to build smartphones.
Material things.
Yeah. But here, the raw material being aggressively harvested across a million worlds, loaded onto massive, heavily armored black ships, transported across the galaxy, and literally plugged into a machine to be burned in the furnace of the Golden Throne, isn't coal. It's human beings. It's human souls.
It's an unfathomable scale of sacrifice.
When you read the accounts of the sisters, there is zero glory here. They don't think they are heroes. It is just the grim, soul-crushing, bureaucratic normalization of mass, daily human sacrifice.
And that normalization is the key to understanding the horror of the Imperium. The text explicitly states, there is no glory in their task, only necessity. The Sisters of Silence see the raw, bleeding cost of the Imperium's existence firsthand every single day.
They see it all.
They are the executioners, yes, but they are also trapped in this exact same system.
Right.
They know that if they stop hunting, if the black ships stop arriving at Terra, the Emperor's light dies, the lighthouse goes dark, warp travel ceases, and humanity is consumed by the screaming abyss of chaos.
They don't have a choice either.
No. They are fully complicit in a staggering atrocity, but it is an atrocity framed as an absolute, non-negotiable survival imperative.
Which perfectly transitions us to the people who actually sit in the comfortable rooms and write the rules for this atrocity. The people who sign the shipping manifests for human souls. Let's look at the third perspective, the bureaucrats, the High Lords of Terra.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of how a society functions under unimaginable stress, the High Lords of Terra represent the ultimate cynical evolution of institutional logic.
Cynical is the right word.
The Emperor is silent on his throne, the Primarchs are dead or missing, so who actually runs the day-to-day operations of a million worlds? The High Lords, a council of 12 bureaucrats, military leaders, and religious zealots.
Just 12 people.
Yes. They are the voice of absolute cruel necessity. They govern the vast imperium in the Emperor's name while he sits paralyzed and rotting.
And the sheer numerical cost they sign off on every day is staggering. The texts give us the exact horrifying metric, 1,000 souls a day.
1,000 every single day.
Every single day, 1,000 human beings brought by the black ships are plugged into the Golden Throne, and their life force is agonizingly drained away to keep the psychic beacon burning. 1,000 people. Every single day, without a moment's hesitation.
Let's dissect the justification provided by a High Lord in one of the recovered transcripts, because they aren't cartoon villains twirling their mustaches. They believe they are the saviors of the human race.
They think they're the good guys.
They do. They ask defensively, "You think we wish for this. You think we do not weep for the innocent souls we sent to the throne." But they quickly, seamlessly pivot to their impenetrable defense. They are the guardians of a million worlds, trillions of lives.
The trolley problem on a galactic scale.
Exactly. They argue that they do not maintain this horrific system because they are foolish, but because the alternative is the screaming madness of the warp.
Hold on, let me ask you to explain that, because it's easy for them to just say the alternative is worse. What does the screaming madness of the warp actually mean for an average citizen if the High Lords decided to just, stop feeding the throne?
If the Golden Throne loses power and the the Emperor's psychic lighthouse goes out, several things happen almost instantaneously. First, every single faster-than-light ship currently traveling through the warp goes blind.
Blind in hell.
Yes. They are immediately lost in a dimension of literal demons, their hulls crushed, their crews driven instantly insane or possessed. Second, planetary communication, which relies on psychic choirs projecting messages through the warp, ceases.
So everyone is just cut off.
Every planet is suddenly totally isolated. Food shipments stop, military reinforcements stop. Finally, without the Emperor's psychic presence holding the barrier shut, massive rifts in reality would tear open across the galaxy, and demonic armies would physically pour onto human worlds.
Oh, wow.
It would be an apocalyptic extinction event on a galactic scale.
Okay, so it's the ultimate ends justify the means argument, dialed up past 11 to a galactic scale. The High Lords are basically holding a gun to the head of humanity and saying, we have to do this or we all die.
Exactly. They are entirely coldly aware that the daily sacrifice is monstrous, but they have successfully rationalized it as a terrible, unavoidable price of existence.
But there's a catch, right?
Yes, there is. However, the source material also provides a highly critical piece of analysis here, peeling back their noble facade. It states that their faith and their sorrow are deeply pragmatic. The absolute terror of the warp is used as a tool to control the masses and justify their own supreme power.
Ah, so they are weaponizing the horror.
Yeah.
They are using the very real threat of demonic extinction and the horrific necessity of this massive bloody sacrifice to maintain their absolute, unchallengeable grip on a million worlds.
It's the ultimate leverage.
If you question a High Lord, you aren't just committing treason, you are a heretic, threatening the survival of the entire species. It's not just about survival anymore. It's about control. They use the Emperor's silent, rotting corpse and the daily sacrifice of 1,000 souls as an unassailable rubber stamp for their own absolute dictatorial authority.
It is a profound, dark symbiosis. The Emperor physically needs the souls they provide to maintain his agonizing, tethered existence and hold back the dark. The High Lords politically need the Emperor's divine silent authority and the sheer terror of the alternative to keep their sprawling, decaying, rebellious empire from fracturing.
That is messed up.
It is a massive systemic loop built entirely on mutually assured destruction and sustained by industrial-scale human sacrifice.
Bringing all these grim, heavy perspectives together really forces us to confront the true, terrifying nature of this Imperium. We have the Emperor's isolated despair as he watches his dream die, the executioner's cold, mechanical reality of harvesting humans, and the bureaucrat's pragmatic, self-serving cruelty.
It covers every angle of the system.
It does. It all synthesizes into the core, devastating thesis of our source material. The Imperium fiercely worships the Emperor as a divine savior, but in reality, his rotting, agonizing state on the throne is the ultimate testament to their damnation.
That is the defining tragedy of this entire universe. They survive, yes. The human race is technically still alive. But look at what survival costs.
Look at the mechanics of it.
Exactly. Look at what they have become to achieve it. The source text summarizes the grim darkness of this universe perfectly. You have a being, a godlike intellect who gave absolutely everything, who utilized his unimaginable power and sacrificed his own sons, all to save humanity and elevate them to a rational utopia.
And what does he get for it?
And the reward for his cosmic sacrifice is that he has to sit in eternal, silent agony for 10,000 years and watch his species devolve into the very fanatical, superstitious, blood-soaked nightmare he so deeply hated and fought to destroy.
He became a god who wanted to destroy gods,
Yeah.
and now he's trapped by his own worshippers. It's sickeningly ironic.
And he survives only through endless cannibalistic sacrifice and suffering. The Imperium is not a civilization striving for progress or scientific discovery or a better tomorrow.
No, it's stagnant.
It is a massive, decaying shell fighting a perpetual, desperate holding action against inevitable extinction, literally using the blood and souls of its own citizens as mortar to patch the crumbling walls.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. It's a terrifying mirror for us. We've all been in systems, maybe not a galactic empire powered by souls, obviously, but, a bad job, a toxic relationship, a broken corporate institution, or a flawed political system.
We can all relate to that on some level.
Have you ever looked around and realized that the original noble purpose of that system has completely died and rotted away?
Yeah.
But everyone just keeps their heads down, going through the awful, painful motions, shoveling coal into the furnace, simply because they are too terrified of what happens if the machine stops.
It's a very common human trap.
It's an intensely human flaw to maintain the shell of a thing long after the spirit has died. We cling to the familiar misery because the unknown is too scary.
It is a profound exploration of institutional momentum and the ultimate manifestation of the sunk cost fallacy on a massive systemic scale. When does the cost of maintaining a system finally outweigh the benefit of its existence?
That's the big question.
The Imperium answers that question by loudly declaring that no cost is too high, no atrocity too great, even if it means living in a self-inflicted hell, as long as they survive one more day.
Right. Let's do a quick recap of the staggering, incredibly dark journey we just took. We started with the awe-inspiring ambition of the Great Crusade, the anathema, the creation of the Primarchs, the dream of a unified, rational galaxy pushing back the warp.
A dream that died very quickly.
Yeah, and we tracked how that immense hubris, the belief that one man could out-engineer chaos, led to a shattered dream, a devastating civil war, and violent hypocrisy. And ultimately, it led to the chilling mechanical reality we see today, a silent, screaming God, trapped on a decaying golden throne, fueled by the daily execution of 1,000 human souls, presiding over an empire that has fundamentally betrayed everything he ever stood for.
It is a masterclass in tragic world building and systemic consequence, but it also leaves us with a terrifying, unresolved tension humming in the background of everything we've discussed.
Which leads us to our final thought. I want to leave you with a chilling question that is extrapolated entirely from the mechanics we explored today. The historical records tell us the Emperor is a rotting husk. He is held together only by ancient extreme measures that no one understands anymore.
The caretakers are blind.
And crucially, he himself explicitly admits that he is failing in his hopeless war against the abyss. Therefore, you have to ask, what happens on the inevitable day when the machinery finally gives out?
It is inevitable.
What happens on the day when his silent screams finally stop? What happens to 1,000,000 worlds when 1,000 human souls a day are suddenly no longer enough to keep the corpse alive?
The dam breaks, and the ocean of hell pours in.
Exactly. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the darkness. Keep questioning the narratives of absolute power, keep looking at the hidden costs of the systems running around you, and we'll see you next time.